Want to create SaaS animations like this? I'll show you the full process, from 3D animations and transitions to this awesome carousel, all in After Effects. Let's get into it.
First, let's create a new composition. Easily customize the colors and change the animation so the text appears where I'll animate the position of the text and create the graph and the timing. We already have a much smoother and more dynamic text animation. Now let's bring in the SVG logo. Using the SaaS Kit extension, I can import the SVG directly into After Effects, and it automatically comes in as a shape layer. I'll place it in the center of the composition and rename the layers to keep everything organized. Changing the color is also really easy. I don't need the typography for now, so I'll hide that layer and lock it.
is looking clean. It to the glass shape. To hide these black areas around the footage, I'll add CC small adjustments to the layer position so everything lines up nicely.
I'll animate the null's position and move everything toward the left so the layers smoothly exit the frame. I'll enable motion blur for all the